In this video, I want to spend some time and I want to work with a web application vulnerability testing scanner, a very well-known one, nikto. Now, there is a Windows equivalent of this, wik2, but it's just easy enough to do this right from the Kali command line interface. And so what we're going to do is, taking the information that we learned from before, we know that there's a vulnerable server out on the network, and we saw that the web port was open. So we're going to go ahead and do a little reconnaissance and then go ahead and scan this. So I'm going to check my host IP address, ipconfig, or ifconfig rather, because I'm on Unix. ifconfig, Ethernet 0. Okay, I'm on the 92.128 network. I'm going to ping my target, 192.168.92.131, verify I have connectivity. And again, I can see a little bit of activity going on in the back here inside the ether rate, just to simply demonstrate the volume of traffic. Okay, so what I'm going to do is nikto, nikto, okay, and we're going to just do a highlight of the tool, and then we're going to point it at the server and run it. So this is nikto version 2.1.4. And no host specified. And that's what you get if you just type the command. You basically get the help. I can set a configuration file. I can turn the outputs if I want those to display to me or not. I can do a TAC H or TAC host for the target host, which is what we're going to do. And then I can choose what I wanted to do with an output. And I highly recommend this one just because it's easier for documentation. For illustration here, I'm simply going to have everything go to the command line terminal, but it does rush to the terminal fast. So, you may realistically want to consider using this with to an output of a file. Also, you can choose no SSL or disable 404 error page not found checks. Use a specific port. If there's something else other than 80, you can specify that. And then you can get into privileges or force SSL mode, or tune it or update it. So one of the easiest things to do first to make sure that we have the latest and greatest plugins would be to do a nikto update. So nikto-update, and it'll take a little bit to run, and it'll be interesting to see this go out to cert.net, basically download that upload file, and you can see that it was significant traffic. And it says retrieving the variables, the database variables, and the icon, and the server messages, and the plugins, and the database test, and any sort of changes. And it says this version is outdated. Please upgrade to 2.15 or a better version. And we could realistically check this. I mean, what we could do here is, if we, since I'm apparently using an outdated version, I could do an apt-get update as well, right? And this is basically just making sure that all of my sources are updated. Or I can do an apt-get upgrade, okay? And that will literally go through an upgrade of each one. Now, I'm not going to do this here and now because apparently I need 43 more megabytes of additional disk space. I'm sorry, I'm going to get 978 megabytes of archives, and so I'm going to fill this up. So you do get a summary: 612 upgraded, 0 newly installed, 0 to remove, and 44 not upgraded. So you get a little summary at the end of your update. I'm not necessarily concerned for the demonstration purposes that we actually have the latest and greatest scans. I'm more concerned about the syntax of the command. But I just wanted you to know you should update the tool before you run it on a live host. So I wanted to walk you through that just slightly. So we're going to clear the screen and then basically scan. So it's nikto-h for host. And then we're going to point it at a particular server. So let's do it to our server, http://192.168.92.131. Now, I could have chose the DNS name or the DNS name of the server here, but it's just as easy, and you should be completely fluent with doing it both ways. If you don't get anything with the domain name resolution, you can take domain name resolution out of the equation. So it's really just a matter of preference, but I do want you to know that you can do both. So I actually have a server set up, and I can do virtual directory /index.html. Now, before I hit scan here and show you what the scan looks like, I want to show you what the other side and the server settings are for what we actually are scanning. So I'm going to go back over here to my Windows 2000 machine or a server. It just happens to be a vulnerable server out on the network. I'm going to go to my administrative tools, and I'm going to look at the information services manager, or basically just open up the MMC. Go to the default websites, and you can see the virtual directory that I have created, virtual directory, and index.html here. And just to kind of elaborate just a little bit more on what this looks like, I'm going to go down to the inet pub and see this from a file point of view. I'm going to go to the virtual directory that I've stored in my root, www root folder, and you can see the index.html. And this was just a basic HTML page that I created, HTML, turn the header on, in the header say hello world, and in the body say, cyber area IT. And then basically end that. So very, very easy, basic HTML, nothing fancy here. So then we open up, we stop that, we go to our server, http://192.168.92.131, and we can pull up that virtual directory and basically see the page load. Okay. And so all I'm proving here is that, yes, there is a web server, but let's pretend we didn't know this. Let's say that the only thing that we have here is a scan from our client that basically says, hey, we have a target 192.131. We saw port 80 open, and we can scan it. Now, I am scanning something specific here, but there's other ways to enumerate the virtual directory. And frankly, I don't even have to put the virtual directory information there, but I just want to show you that you can. Okay, so if I switch over to Ether8 real quick, you can see a whole lot of traffic going right back and forth. I mean, the screen is all red. So this is a whole bunch of HTTP traffic, as the color-coded label on the left illustrates. And when this is done running, the red will go bye-bye. So we're going to let this run, and we'll continue as soon as it's finished. And it looks like it's done. So we can tell that it's done because the red, which is HTTP traffic, is basically going down in Ether8. So we'll go back over. We'll get a summary here in the nikto results, one host tested. That's great. And since this is a completely vulnerable server from the beginning, there's the command that we ran. There's the version, our target IP, or the host name, the specific port, which is the default, which is 80, but again, we could have changed that, the start time of the scan, and the end time at the bottom. So it confirms that it's a Windows box. It actually fingerprints the operating system. This is IIS 5.0, which at that point, if I found this on a real network, I would probably get up and do a happy dance, because realistically, all of these should have been upgraded by now. There's no CGI directories, at least that are set. IIS appears to be outdated, NT40 or the like, so they're kind enough to tell us that it's outdated. Thank you. Retrieve the MS author via the header. Okay, we qualify what that means, and you could just go to Google and basically search for these terms and see what you get back. Retrieve the dev header, which is an authoring and versioning component. Allowed HTTP methods, trace, get, head, delete, put, etc., etc. It found open source vulnerability database 5646 HTTP method allow header delete may allow clients to remove files on the web server. Okay. And you can basically go through these one at a time. So head, delete, put, move. Okay. And I would go through these one by one, especially anything that has a vulnerability database reference. And it doesn't matter if it's an open source vulnerability database or if it's what I would consider more the conventional common vulnerabilities and exposure CVE references to the vulnerabilities. Nonetheless, it gives you the information on what you can go research to actually quantify if these are actual true vulnerabilities, which in this case more than likely is, or are these realistically false positives. And in some cases, will actually tell us, make sure that you actually have these patches installed. Well, considering that I built a server years and years ago, and I use it for, demonstrating vulnerabilities, I can ensure you that these are not installed. But we get pretty good information, everything from cross-site scripting to specific vulnerability database information. And in some cases, you can actually link right to the Microsoft TechNet security bulletins and, go through it and then, of course, mitigate the risk. So that's the overview of the nikto web application pen testing scanner. Always keep your signatures up to date, latest and greatest. And then also, I'll finish this with showing that we can take off the virtual directory, and then I can realistically just take all of this and output it to a file by changing my command slightly and putting a double greater than at the end of it, which means redirect and append to a file, and we'll call this, nikto scan today's date, which would be month. You don't want to add spaces in here. It would be month, day, year, and then case number. So I'll just put, CCCC for case number .txt. And then again, you could just let that run, and sure enough, you can see it running in the background. Simultaneously, we're not going to let that finish, but just to prove to you that there is stuff in the file, you can go ahead and look at that, and there's your documentation that you would use. And all I did was basically, you could do realistically interrogate this file. You could do a less, a more, a head, a tail, open it up with a specific file editor. Either way, that's where your information is, which just happens to be stored because I didn't use a file path in the directory that you're currently working out of. So I hope you enjoyed the video. That's a nikto scan, at least the overview of it. Find a vulnerable server on your own home network, and get some practice with actually, one, doing the scans against the target, but also researching the actual vulnerabilities and determining how to fix them and patch them. So I want you always to be able to work offensively and defensively. In this case, we would just have to apply a bunch of patches and really get the system up to date, or actually upgrade to a new operating system. But that's basically the overview. So again, don't forget to work offensively and defensively. My name's Leo Dreger. Don't forget to check us out on the social networks: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, and I'll see you in the next video.